Part 7. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 61. A strong wind blew outside, and the cold wind blew by, causing passers-by to shrink their necks to resist the cold. Wei's mother also curled up her neck to resist the severe cold, but her clothes were bought in the south. They could still withstand the severe cold in the south, but when they arrived in Kyoto, they were not so useful. But she was reluctant to spend money to buy clothes. After all, winter clothes were not cheap, and Kyoto was a high-consumption place. Besides, she was only staying in Kyoto for a few days and would return to the south soon. It was not cost-effective to buy clothes, so it was better not to buy them. Wei's mother couldn't resist the cold wind, so she could only put down the call to Wei Yuxian and look for a place to take shelter from the wind. A few seconds later, she saw a sheltered place from the wind, and quickly ran over with her luggage. After arriving at this place, she felt less cold. She rubbed her hands, trying to warm them that were about to freeze, but it was so cold that it seemed like it was going to snow. She rubbed her hands for a few minutes and still didn't feel anything, so she had to give up. Forget it, she would call the money loser first. When she got the money, she would stay in a hotel and have a good sleep. 1 million. When she has 1 million, she won't feel bad about staying in a hotel once. Wei's mother tremblingly took out her cell phone, opened the address book, found Wei Yuxian's number, and chose to dial it from another number. She sniffed and waited for the connection on the other side, while her heart beat violently. When she thought that she was about to get a huge sum of 1 million, she was so excited that she couldn't sleep. 1 million. That's 1 million. She has never seen so much money in her life. It was mealtime in the Fu mansion. Wei Yuxian was eating alone at the dining table. Fu Xuanyi did not come back for lunch today. She was used to having lunch alone. If Fu Xuanyi ate with her, she might not be so comfortable. It's nice to eat alone, it's quiet and you don't have to worry about other people. Just when her stomach was half full, the cell phone on the table rang. It was someone calling. She picked it up and looked at it, and found that it was an unfamiliar number, and she didn't know who was calling. These days, unfamiliar numbers are either wrong numbers or sales pitches and scams. Wei Yuxian is generally not very good at answering them, so she chooses to hang up. If this call is a sales call, then after being hung up on once, the call will not come back again. If it is not a sales call, he will definitely call a second time. As soon as she put down the phone and took a bite of food, the phone rang again. Okay, this call is most likely not a sales call, but someone else made the wrong call. Wei Yuxian swallowed the food in her mouth, picked up her phone, and pressed connect. Hello. Mother Wei on the other side of the phone breathed a sigh of relief when she finally answered the phone. When Wei Yuxian hung up the phone on her just now, she thought the loser knew it was her who made the call, and she panicked. But now it seems that this loser really didn't know it was her who called. But the fact that Wei Yuxian didn't answer her call still pissed her off. She opened her mouth and cursed, "How dare you block me, you loser! You are so outrageous. If I hadn't changed my number, I wouldn't be able to contact you, isn't it?" Wei Yuxian didn't expect that the person calling would be her mother. Her heart trembled and she almost couldn't hold the phone steady. It seems that my mother still hasn't given up and is still coming to ask for money from me. She subconsciously wanted to hang up the phone, but Mother Wei over there seemed to know what she was thinking and said quickly, "You lose money, don't even think about hanging up. If you hang up, you will be dead." Wei Yuxian hesitated for a while. Her threat had some effect, but only for a moment. Now, she still had to hang up the phone. "Stop calling me, I really have no money." After saying that, she was about to hang up the phone. Mother Wei over there quickly shouted, "You lose money. I'm in Kyoto now. If you dare to hang up, I will never let you go." But even if Wei Yuxian didn't hang up the phone, she never thought of letting her go. This time, she must make this loser bleed out. Who told her to lie to him? What do you mean you have no money? She is not even willing to give out 20,000 yuan. She is already taken care of by a man, will she still have no money? How could that man not give her money to spend? Totally impossible. Since you don't want to give me 20,000 yuan, just give me 1 million yuan. This is all money-losing stuff you asked for. Wei Yuxian paused and did not make any move for a moment, blankly recalling what her mother had just said in her mind. She said, she is in Kyoto now. She said she was in Kyoto. She said she was in Kyoto. Wei Yuxian's mind exploded. She never expected that her mother would come to Kyoto for money. It seems that her mother really believes that she is rich. This time, if she doesn't give her money, she won't let it go. Although she may not be found by her mother in the Fu mansion, who knows whether her mother will find her? What if his mother finds him? What would Fu Xuanyi think when he saw his mother? This is Fu Xuanyi's territory. Even she is an outsider. If another outsider comes in, Fu Xuanyi will definitely be very angry. However, she still bet that her mother would not be able to find her here. After all, in a place as big as Kyoto, if she could easily find someone, it would only mean that her mother was very lucky. She took a deep breath, calmed down her panic, and said, even if you are in Kyoto, I don't have money, whether you believe it or not. Wei's mother said with some certainty of victory, you lose money, I know everything about you in Kyoto. You are not in school now, you are being kept by an old man, and you have a child, right? When she said this, she was triumphant and her tone was full of embarrassment. Wei Yuxian was even more shocked. The hand holding the phone unconsciously tightened, and her breathing stopped. How did she know this? She obviously didn't reveal any information. Suddenly, Wei Yuxian captured an important piece of information in her mother's words just now, that is, the word old man. She has always said that she was kept by an old man, who else could it be besides Ding Nana? So, Ding Nana told her this news. But, how could she have anything to do with Ding Nana? The two of them have been unable to have a relationship for 8 lifetimes. How could the mother? Wei Yuxian couldn't wrap her head around it. What happened today was so shocking that her brain was running out of energy. She pinched her thighs with her hands to calm herself down and not get distracted. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 62. No matter how Mother and Ding Nana met, these are not important anymore. What is important now is to solve the current problem. She really didn't have any money, not even a penny. Fu Xuanyi paid for her food, clothing, and transportation now, and she didn't have time to work. Where did she get the money? Therefore, she didn't have the money to ask for. Her mother was only in Kyoto now, and she hadn't found her yet, so there was no danger. She comforted herself like this. Kyoto is so big, how can it be so easy to find someone? My mother is just an ordinary person, not so capable. If it were Fu Xuanyi, Wei Yuxian would definitely be afraid, because Fu Xuanyi was very capable and Kyoto was his territory, so finding someone would be a matter of minutes. However, my mother is not Fu Xuanyi. She does not have such great abilities. She is just an ordinary person, a peasant woman. She will never give money to her mother. She endured the pain and said, so what if you know? I said I have no money, and you don't even want to get a penny from me. Saying such words, Wei Yuxian mustered up a lot of courage. As a child, she grew up in a family where everyone in the family could bully her, which caused her to have very low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, and be timid in doing things. She hates that she has such a personality, but she can't change it in a short period of time because the family's influence is huge. It was a big step for her to muster up the courage to say such things to her mother. There is no way, this is her natural personality, she has her own comfort zone, and she doesn't really want to step out of this comfort zone. How can such a character be said to be changeable? Mother Wei didn't panic at all and said, "You lose money, you have really strong wings. Now you dare to talk to me like this. Okay, you find a man and you think you can turn a pheasant into a phoenix. You don't want to give money? Then listen to me. If you don't give me money today, just watch and see how your own reputation has disappeared. You were kept by an old man, and you also had the old man's bastard, and you got pregnant out of wedlock. What if people in the village knew about it? What would they say? Do you dare to come back in this life?" Mother Wei almost shouted the last sentence. Wei Yuxian was shocked when she heard this. She didn't expect her mother to threaten her like this. This is too cruel. This is really cruel. Mother uses it, but it's her reputation. If her mother really told these things about her in the village, the people in the village would be so upset that she, Wei Yuxian, would become the talk of the village in just a few days. What kind of virtues do the people in the village have? Tell this to this, tell that to that, then her reputation will be completely gone. According to the previous post, her reputation was lost in the school, but she didn't know many people in the school, so it would be gone if it was gone. At worst, people would forget about it after a while. But it's different in the village. Everyone in the village knows everyone, all kinds of uncles and aunts, they all know that they exist. Saw myself. So cruel. Mother is so cruel. If she dared to say this, wouldn't she be afraid of others poking the backbone of their family? Wei Yuxian burst into tears instantly, gritted her teeth and asked, "Do you have to do this? Do you have to force me like this?" "You had to force me to do this," Mother Wei bit back. "You said it would be better if you just handed over the money obediently. Would I still do this? If you had handed over the money earlier, I wouldn't have to run away. I came to Kyoto for a trip and I wasted so much on my fare." Wei Yuxian wanted to shout loudly at this moment, "I really have no money. Not a penny. Don't come to me asking for money again. I'm just a poor guy. Poor guy who can't even afford food." But she couldn't do this, because there were several servants beside her, including the two nannies assigned to her by the old lady and Aunt Fu. If she shouted out, they would definitely attract their attention. Even if she was in pain, she could only swallow it in her stomach. But she didn't know that her current appearance had been noticed by the servants around her, especially Aunt Fu, who had been paying attention to what was going on around her. Wei Yuxian said in a relatively low voice, "I said I have no money. I really don't have a penny. How many more times do you have to tell me?" Now she doesn't even dare to hang up the phone, because she is afraid that after she hangs up, her mother will spread rumors about her reputation. Although these are all facts, she did do some things that can be criticized. However, she doesn't want outsiders to know these things. Even if she never goes back to the village again and never sees the people in the village, who knows what else her mother will do for the sake of it. After all, in her eyes, her daughter is not a relative at all. For money and for her two precious sons, she will do anything. Wei Yuxian was really afraid that her future would be ruined. Her life was really miserable. She had not had a few good days, and she lived in fear every day. She originally wanted to create a beautiful world of her own with her own hands, but would her wings be broken before she took action? Wei's mother didn't believe what she said about having no money, and said, "You have no money? Who did you lie to? You are being taken care of by an old man, how can you still have no money? The old man gives you a lot of money a month, right? You should transfer the money quickly, otherwise, I really have to go back and tell you. Not only that, I will also expose you in your school and on the internet, so that you will be reviled by thousands of people. What did you say you did badly? Do you have to be a mistress? Do you know that people nowadays hate mistresses the most? Even she despised Wei Yuxian's actions and felt that she was embarrassing. If this matter was revealed, the young Wei family would definitely be criticized. But there is no other way. She won't use this method unless she is forced to do so. Who makes this bitch just refuse to pay? She was kept by an old man and even told her that she had no money. Who would believe her? Wei Yuxian's tears flowed even more fiercely, and she lowered her head. She really couldn't believe that these were the words a mother said to her daughter. Is there really such a person in the world? He even denied his daughter for money. Is she really their child? If she was really their child, why were they willing to do this to her? They treat their brothers and themselves at completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Wei Yuxian had absolutely no choice. She believed that her mother would definitely do something like that if she didn't get the money. So, today, she has to give this money whether she wants to or not. But she really has no money. Where can she get 20,000 yuan to give to her mother? Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 63. Even if she is sold, she can't come up with 20,000 yuan in an instant. How can I do? Suddenly, Wei Yuxian thought of the card that Fu Xuanyi gave her. Fu Xuanyi and the old lady had said that she could spend the money in this card as much as she wanted. I heard that there was a lot of money in that card and there was no limit. If she used 20,000 yuan, Fu Xuanyi wouldn't know about it, right? After all, 20,000 yuan is just a very small sum of money to Fu Xuanyi, and it will definitely not attract his attention. When she got the card, Wei Yuxian never thought about using it and kept it in the drawer of the bedside table in her room. She thought that she would never use that card in this life, and that card did not belong to her, it was not her thing, but how long had it been? 3 months? She doesn't know anymore. Anyway, she hasn't been in Kyoto for a long time, and she hasn't lived in Fu Mansion for a long time. But these are not important now, and she doesn't have so much thoughts to think about them. The worst case scenario is that after she makes money herself, she can secretly deposit the money back into this card so that she doesn't owe Fu Xuanyi. This money should be regarded as something she borrowed from Fu Xuanyi temporarily, and she will return it to him when she has the ability. After thinking about this, Wei Yuxian made up her mind and decided to transfer money to her mother from the bank card Fu Xuanyi gave her. She sniffed quietly, wiped away her tears silently, tried to look normal, and said, I will transfer the money to you, please wait a moment. Mother Wei was so happy when she saw that she finally relented. She said, okay, then I will give you 5 minutes. If the money has not arrived after 5 minutes, you know the consequences. At this moment, Wei's mother did not forget to threaten her. Hearing these words made Wei Yuxian's heart hurt even more. He said numbly, okay, just 5 minutes. She hung up the phone without any hesitation. She couldn't even eat anymore. She stood up and lowered her head and said, I'm full. Let's go back to the room first. She said this to the servants in the living room. After saying this, she didn't wait for their reactions and walked upstairs with her head lowered. She didn't have any appetite to eat this meal anymore. Aunt Fu and others watched her leave without saying anything or daring to say anything. Aunt Fu looked at her declining back and realized that things were not simple, very not simple. Madame was obviously in a good mood just now, and her food was delicious, but since she answered the phone call, her mood began to fluctuate, and she even shed tears. If there was nothing wrong with this phone call, who would believe it? No, she has to tell Master Xian about this, so that Master Xian knows that Madam is unhappy, and that someone is making Madam unhappy. So, just after Wei Yuxian walked into the room, Aunt Fu took out her phone and called Fu Xuanyi to inform him of the situation just now. In the room, Wei Yuxian found the bank card Fu Xuanyi gave her, checked the information on her phone, and confirmed that it was the card. She put the card down again and stared at the blank wall in a daze. Fu Xuanyi gave this card to her at the beginning. In order to facilitate her use, it was also bound to her mobile phone so that she could use it anytime and anywhere. Now, it was more convenient for Wei Yuxian to transfer money to her mother. As time passed by, Wei Yuxian counted the time, and at the last minute, she accepted her fate and transferred 20,000 yuan to her mother. Not long after the operation, she received a consumption reminder on her phone. She didn't know that in addition to being sent to her mobile phone, the news would also be sent to Fu Xuanyi's mobile phone. She thought she was spending her money perfectly, but little did she know that all of this would be exposed in front of Fu Xuanyi. She lay on the bed as if she was relieved, staring blankly at the ceiling, still holding the mobile phone in her hand. Her heart seemed to have been emptied out, and she turned into a living dead. She used Fu Xuanyi's money. Just now, less than a minute ago, she used Fu Xuanyi's money. It cost 20,000 yuan. $20,000. How long will it take for her to earn this money? 1 year? Or 2 years? The burden on her body suddenly became much heavier, and Wei Yuxian felt guilty, as if she had stolen someone else's money. She did this because she was really desperate. It was her mother who forced her to take this path. It was the same at the beginning, and it was the same on the day she came to Kyoto. It was my mother who forced herself to exchange money in that way. If her mother hadn't transferred her money, why would so many things have happened in the future? Wei Yuxian cried silently, and the tears in her eyes quickly filled up and poured out, blurring her vision. It's time for my mother to receive the money now, right? Is she happy? You won't come to me for money again in the future, right? Thinking like this, she suddenly thought of the possibility that her mother would ask her for money in the future. If it's just one time, my mother will not be satisfied. As long as the family is short of money, her mother may come to her. It's okay once, she can transfer it, but what about 2, 3, countless times? What should she do then? At that time, will she have to transfer money again and again? This is a bottomless pit. She thought for a while, still thinking about some worse outcomes. Just when she was panicking about this, the phone in her hand rang again. Her heart trembled violently. She picked it up and looked at it, and saw a series of unfamiliar numbers. But for some reason, she could tell at a glance that this was what her mother was calling. Didn't she transfer the money? Why was she even calling? Wei Yuxian couldn't figure it out and didn't dare not answer the phone. She could only wipe away her tears, sniffed and answered the phone. Hello. Mother Wei's voice was not filled with joy at receiving the money. Instead, she yelled at her loudly, "Bitch, what do you mean? What do you mean by just transferring 20,000 yuan? She didn't expect that. She didn't tell Wei Yuxian how much money she wanted to transfer just now, she just asked her to transfer money. Wei Yuxian thought she wanted 20,000 yuan. After all, for a family like theirs, 20,000 yuan was a lot of money. But now, her mother called again and asked her what she meant. Could it be that her money had decreased? Does mother want more than 20,000 yuan? Soon, Wei Yuxian knew how much money her mother wanted. Wei's mother's voice came from the receiver, 20,000 yuan? Are you sending me away? With your current worth, how dare you only transfer me 20,000 yuan? Wei Yuxian collapsed immediately. She really wants more money. Even 20,000 yuan can't satisfy her. How much does she want? She couldn't control her sobs and asked, "How much do you want? Can't you just give it a try once? You must force her again and again." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju. Chapter 64. Wei's mother didn't hesitate. She also wanted to get the money quickly and said, 1 million, I want 1 million. Wei Yuxian felt like there was something wrong with her ears. Otherwise, why would she hear the words 1 million? She asked uncertainly, "How much do you think?" Mother Wei clicked her tongue impatiently and repeated what she just said, 1 million. I said 1 million. Do you hear me clearly? Wei Yuxian bit her lower lip, thinking she must be crazy. Otherwise, how could such words come out of her mouth? 1 million. Where did she get a million? Even the 20,000 yuan just now was something she finally made up her mind to transfer, and now her mother actually asked her for 1 million. It's crazy. If she had a million, why would she live such a life? She really opened her mouth and thought she could have such great abilities. Wei Yuxian adjusted her breathing to prevent her emotions from fluctuating too much, but in this situation, it was impossible to keep her emotions from fluctuating too much. She said, 1 million, you can even ask. Wei's mother didn't think it was anything. She even thought that only 1 million would be an advantage for her. She said, I'm just asking, how about 1 million? You are being kept by someone now. That man must be very rich, right? It's only 1 million, what does it mean to you? Wei Yuxian was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Yes. Fu Xuanyi is very rich. As far as Kyoto is concerned, there are few people richer than him. But Fu Xuanyi is rich, what does it have to do with her? That's Fu Xuanyi's money, not hers. But the meaning behind her mother's words was as if Fu Xuanyi's money belonged to her and she could use it however she wanted. How can it be? How dare she use Fu Xuanyi's money? Does she want to die? Tears fell out again. Wei Yuxian hated herself for being weak and incompetent, and also hated herself for being incompetent and unable to do anything. 1 million. Does she really want to transfer 1 million to her mother? Use Fu Xuanyi's card? If she doesn't change, what will happen to her reputation? But the transfer was too easy for her, just as she wanted. Then, what else can be done? What else can be done? Wei Yuxian thought anxiously and shed more and more tears. Suddenly, a face popped into her mind, a stern face, a face that was so cold and scary. It's Fu Xuanyi, that man. Wei Yuxian thought of him at this juncture. Only he could help her solve this matter. Just like when she was bullied by Ding Nana, the first person she thought of was Fu Xuanyi. Later, Fu Xuanyi suspended her studies, and she no longer had to see the ugly faces of Ding Nana and others. But at that time, it was Fu Xuanyi who asked her to drop out of school first, and she was able to leave school so smoothly. Now, if she asks Fu Xuanyi for help, will he help her for the sake of the child in her belly? Wei Yuxian felt a strange impulse in her heart and wanted to tell Fu Xuanyi about this immediately and let him help her solve everything. After all, they have lived together for so long, and she has 2 of his children in her belly. Even for the sake of her children, he will help her, right? Wei Yuxian no longer cares about so much. She only knows now that she cannot transfer this million to her mother. She must seek help. Even if that person is Fu Xuanyi, even if Fu Xuanyi doesn't help her in the end, she still has to give it a try. When Wei's mother saw that she had stopped talking, she threatened her fiercely, hurry up and pay for it. Please transfer the money to me quickly, otherwise your reputation will be really ruined. As soon as these words came out, Wei Yuxian was more determined to ask for help. She said, I can't come up with so much money now, please give me some time. She stalled for time so that she could ask Fu Xuanyi for help later. Wei's mother also knew that it would be difficult to come up with 1 million, so she thought she would ask the old man for money, and said, "Okay, I will give you one afternoon. If you don't transfer the money to me before 7 o'clock tonight, you are dead." Wei Yuxian didn't want to say a word, hung up the phone, and shed even more tears. All the words my mother said echoed in my mind, but none of them sounded good. Those who either threatened her or insulted her. And she has lived such a life not only today, but also for 19 years. Wei Yuxian was immersed in sadness, so sad that she couldn't help herself. After a while, she felt that she could no longer be immersed in such a state and had to call Fu Xuanyi quickly, so she took deep breaths to calm down. The tears finally stopped pouring out, and she also controlled some of her sadness. At least she wasn't so sad that she couldn't even speak. She took out her mobile phone and found Fu Xuanyi's phone number. Her finger was hovering over the dial button, but she refused to press it. She is still doing some mental construction. It takes a lot of courage for her to tell Fu Xuanyi such a thing. Although she had lived with Fu Xuanyi for several months and had the most intimate contact with him, she and Fu Xuanyi were still strangers. He didn't speak much, and the total time he spent meeting him wasn't that much. Add to that her fear and awe of him, and he was more like a stranger. But at this moment, if she doesn't call him, she can only transfer money to her mother. Fu Xuanyi was the only person she could think of who could help her. After hesitating for about a minute, Wei Yuxian bit her lower lip, swallowed, and mustered up the courage to press the dial button. Her heartbeat was beating violently, she was nervous, and her heart was filled with panic. Here, Fu Xuanyi was sitting in the car going home. The driver in front drove the car as fast as possible, just to get people back to Fu's house as quickly as possible. After Aunt Fu called him to tell him that something was wrong with Wei Yuxian's situation, he put down his work and rushed home immediately. Now, he still has 10 minutes to get home. Before leaving the company, he also asked his special assistant to check what happened to Wei Yuxian recently. It was also at this time that he remembered some details from the past, details of Wei Yuxian's emotional loss, and realized something was wrong. Before, he had always thought that she had major mood swings due to emotional instability during pregnancy. In addition, he believed that she would not cheat on him, so he believed what she said. Now it seems that there is another reason for her depression. Fu Xuanyi was sitting in the car, with a terrifyingly gloomy face. The Buddhist beads on his wrist were also taken off, and he turned them around in his hand to suppress the anger in his heart. When he thought about the little white rabbit hiding things from him, his mood became violent. It would take time to investigate her matter. He couldn't find out what she had hidden from him right away, which only made him feel even worse. It was also at this moment that his cell phone rang, and he took it out before he could see it. It was the person he had been thinking about calling. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 65. He didn't know why she called him this time, but a voice in his heart told him that it wouldn't be a good thing. The prayer beads in his hand stopped spinning and returned to his wrist. He answered the call and then put it to his ear when he heard a faint cry coming from the other end of the phone. In an instant, his heart was lifted. She cried again. His face was even more gloomy, and he now had the urge to kill someone. Afraid that his voice would scare her, who was already fragile, he asked in the gentlest voice in his life, "What's wrong?" When Wei Yuxian heard his voice, her tears fell even more violently. It's like grabbing the only life-saving straw. Actuan. She just called her name and was speechless. Tears kept falling from her eyes. She was so wronged. She didn't want to cry like this, but she couldn't control it, because Fu Xuanyi's voice just now was so gentle and not cold at all, which gave her the illusion that she could rely on him. When people cry, they can still control their emotions if no one comforts them, but once someone comforts them, the grievances in their hearts will be infinitely magnified, and the tears can no longer be held back. Fu Xuanyi's heart tightened even more when he heard this. He used his thumb to rub the beads as a habit to restrain the violent emotions in his heart. However, he touched hard and found nothing, and the beads landed on his wrist. His palms were empty, and if he wanted to touch them, he could only touch them with his index finger. Feeling even more irritable, he controlled his emotions and said, "Don't cry, I'll go back soon." He comforted her, although his comfort was pale and weak and had no effect at all. Wei Yuxian never thought about asking him to come back. She didn't want to disturb his work. She just wanted to call him and see if he could help solve the problem. She never thought about asking him to come back. She quickly said, "No, no need, you don't have to come back." She was crying and talking at the same time, intermittently, not fast, and couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. She was anxious inside, but she couldn't express it, but it made her anxious. Fu Xuanyi glanced at the driver in front of him, who immediately understood what he meant and increased the speed again. He said, "Be obedient, don't say anything, wait for me." How could Wei Yuxian be obedient? Tell her not to talk? That is impossible. Actuan, please don't, just say, on the phone. Wei Yuxian sat up from the bed and said anxiously, trying hard to control her tears so that they would not flow down anymore. "Fu Xuanyi, I'm almost there, be good." Wei Yuxian could only wait for him to come back and tell him face to face. It's just that it seems a bit awkward to talk to someone in person. I can't see anyone on the phone, so it's not so embarrassing. She wanted to hang up the phone, get up and go to the bathroom to look in the mirror to see what she looked like now. Just when she was about to say something, another sentence came from the other side of the phone. "Hold the phone." Wei Yuxian paused for a moment and said without hanging up the phone. She walked into the bathroom with her cell phone. When she saw herself in the mirror, she still looked embarrassed, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seemed that every time, she appeared in embarrassment in front of Fu Xuanyi, and she didn't know why. Since they were all in such a mess, she didn't bother to clean up anymore. She walked out of the bathroom and sat blankly on the bed, with the sound of a car running coming from her phone. It was obviously just an ordinary voice, but it sounded strangely reassuring to her at the moment. Probably, it was because the voice was that Fu Xuanyi was coming home, so she felt at ease. Fu Xuanyi, her only life-saving straw. It was very quiet on the phone. Neither of them spoke, just listening to each other's breathing silently. A few minutes later, Wei Yuxian heard the sound of the car turning off and knew that he had returned home. She couldn't help but become a little nervous, thinking about what to say later. Because Fu Xuanyi didn't speak, she didn't dare to hang up the phone, so she still put it to her ear. As soon as Fu Xuanyi entered the door, Aunt Fu came up to him and said, "Master Xian, Madam is in the room." He said in a low voice, and walked into Wei Yuxian's room without even having time to change his shoes. Wei Yuxian listened to the rapid footsteps on the phone, one after another, hitting her heart regularly. Finally, the door opened, and she looked towards the door, only to see the man appearing at the door of her room with a mobile phone in his hand and his face still as stern. Fu Xuanyi looked at her and saw the tears on her face, the red eyes and nose, as if she had been severely bullied, and couldn't help but stride forward. He hung up the phone, put it in his pocket, walked up to Wei Yuxian in a few strides, and hugged her tightly before she could regain her senses. He lifted her onto his lap, put his big hands on the back of her head, and pulled her into his arms hard. This is a hug that cannot be refused. Wei Yuxian was still holding the phone in her hand, and she was stunned. She didn't react until now. She just watched the man hold her in his arms with great strength. She was brought back to consciousness by the pain. Fu Xuanyi hugged her too tightly and hurt her. "Actuan, it hurts." She whispered in his arms. She just used the most ordinary voice, but she didn't know that her voice was so soft in Fu Xuanyi's ears. She also couldn't understand why Fu Xuanyi hugged her, and even held her on his lap. His arms were warm and spacious, which was very reassuring. Hearing this, Fu Xuanyi also knew that he was too excited and lost his strength, so he relaxed a little. When he saw that she no longer cried out in pain, he said, "I'm back." These 4 short words made Wei Yuxian feel extremely at ease. She moved, trying to get out of his arms, but couldn't break free, so she said, "Can you let me down? It's so strange to talk like this." Wei Yuxian's tears stopped at this moment, and her rationality returned home. She thought that she and Fu Xuanyi were not suitable and too close, so she wanted to leave. But her little head didn't fully realize why Fu Xuanyi hugged her without any hesitation. Such an intimate gesture would obviously only happen between lovers, but it happened to them at this moment. She never thought that Fu Xuanyi would like her. She has always put herself in a very light position, thinking that Fu Xuanyi will not like her and cannot like her. But she underestimated herself and overestimated Fu Xuanyi. Sometimes, fate is so wonderful. If you like someone, you don't just like it if you say you like it, or you don't like it if you don't like it. This thing depends on the heart. Who can control their own heart? Anyway, Fu Xuanyi can't do it. If he likes it, he won't change it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 66. Fu Xuanyi did not answer her question, but told her the answer with his actions, no. His answer was no. He still held her and refused to let go. He said, "Tell me who bullied you." "Don't hide it this time," he added one more sentence. Even if she doesn't say it, it's only a matter of time before he knows what happened to her. Wei Yuxian still wanted to get out of his arms, bit her lower lip and said, "Let me down first, and I'll tell you later." "Very good, I also learned to make conditions with him." But Fu Xuanyi didn't like her. He looked at her face, which was white and tender, and she was well raised by him. His eyes are red, he has cried, and his whole body is extremely soft. He is a very cute little rabbit. Look at those lips again, they are bright red, and they are even more charming and attractive because she bit them several times. Not wanting to hold back any longer, he stared at her lips, kissed her, closed his eyes, and savored the beauty. He had tasted this taste that night, and since then, he had never tasted it again. This beautiful feeling was now awakened in him again. It was still beautiful, even better than that night. Probably because there is something called liking in the middle. He enjoyed the kiss, even if the other protagonist didn't respond. At this moment, the other protagonist Wei Yuxian who was kissed said. Her eyes widened and her brain exploded as she looked at the handsome face so close to her. The bomb was completely blank. Fu Xuanyi, the famous master Xian in Kyoto. An ascetic Buddhist who does not approach women. At this moment, kissed her. How is this going? Who can tell her what's going on? Is she dreaming? Otherwise, why would such a confusing thing happen? This is simply impossible to happen. This is Master Xian. After Wei Yuxian came back from her thoughts, the first thing she did was to push away the person who was kissing her. Push it away without hesitation. Then he looked at the man in front of him with stunned eyes, as if he had seen a ghost. Did you see a ghost? If it were Fu Xuanyi, how could he do such a thing? Fu Xuanyi opened his eyes and looked at the person in his arms. He was panicked and couldn't believe it. He doubted himself and reached out to pinch her face. He replied to General Yu Jun, "If you don't tell me, I'll kiss you." The gangster speaks. How could Wei Yuxian still be in the mood to talk about that? Fu Xuanyi's strange reaction was what she should have asked. Anyway, if you say it before 7 p.m., it's fine. It's only after 1 p.m. now, so there's still a lot of time. She must ask clearly whether he was taken away from him. Wei Yuxian covered her mouth to prevent being attacked again. She opened her eyes wide and wanted to see but didn't dare to look at him. She asked, "Are you Fu Xuanyi?" Fu Xuanyi thought her question was very cute and asked, "I'm not Fu Xuanyi, who is?" Wei Yuxian secretly glanced at his face and was extremely sure that this person was Fu Xuanyi, but the actions he made didn't look like him at all. Thinking of the possibility in her mind, she boldly asked again, "Have you been taken away from you?" After asking, she lowered her head and held her head with her hands, fearing that Fu Xuanyi would hit her. This question must be said to be very presumptuous, but she had to ask. Fu Xuanyi chuckled, and for the first time a smile appeared on his face, which was even more inconsistent with his usual image. Wei Yuxian listened to his deep smile, which was quite pleasant, and she was curious about what he would look like when he smiled. On weekdays, what she saw most was his cold face, expressionless, as if his facial nerves were underdeveloped. Now he smiled, a rare smile. She couldn't restrain her curiosity and secretly raised her head to look at his face like a little animal. The cold expression on his face completely disappeared, replaced by a shallow smile. The lips are curved upward, and there is a clear smile in the eyes. It looks very good, much better than when there is no expression. Wei Yuxian was stunned, immersed in his beautiful smile. Fu Xuanyi is undoubtedly handsome and handsome. Among the people Wei Yuxian has ever met, no one can surpass him. Seeing her expression, Fu Xuanyi's smile became even more obvious and his mood became better. He asked, "Are you stunned?" Wei Yuxian quickly came to her senses, turned her head back and hugged her tightly with her hands. Got caught? With the man's pleasant laughter still in her ears, Wei Yuxian forgot everything in an instant, and only his beautiful smiling face and pleasant voice were in her mind. Ah! How could there be such a good-looking man in this world? Even the sound is so nice. It's so easy, it's heartwarming. Wei Yuxian really couldn't confirm whether he was really Fu Xuanyi. After a while, Fu Xuanyi's laughter stopped. He dug her head out from between his hands with his big hands, lifted her chin with one hand and said, "My dear, you haven't told me yet who bullied you." With a charming voice and a handsome face, who is in the mood to think about other things? Wei Yuxian opened her mouth, unable to say a word, and just stared at him blankly. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Fu Xuanyi leaned over again and kissed her lips. He said, if she doesn't say anything, he will kiss her. Only then did Wei Yuxian come to her senses. Before the man could move further, she pushed him away and said, I said. With such an episode, Wei Yuxian completely forgot about those unhappy emotions and just wanted to speak out quickly to prevent this man from taking advantage of her. Fu Xuanyi looked at her seriously, his eyes seemed to say, "Speak quickly, I'm listening." Wei Yuxian tried to stay as far away from him as possible and stretched her body back, although it was of no use. She smoothed over what happened and allowed her brain to wake up and resume normal operation. She said, "My mother called me today and asked me to transfer 1 million to her, but I didn't have the money, so she said, if I don't transfer." She paused and couldn't say much. Fu Xuanyi listened carefully, patted her back gently with his hand, silently gave her support and courage, and said, "Continue." Wei Yuxian met his eyes, as if they were possessed by magic, and felt an extra strength in her heart, saying, "If I don't change my mind, she will tell about my pregnancy. In our village, reputation is very important. People in the village also like to gossip. Although I may never return to the village again, my mother can do even more extreme things for money. Fu Xuanyi, can you help me?" In the last sentence, her voice was extremely soft, with a hint of pleading. After hearing what she said, the smile on Fu Xuanyi's face disappeared at some point, and the big hand that gently comforted her stopped moving, and asked, "Is there anything else?" There was definitely more than one thing that little white rabbit was hiding from him. She had heard that her mother was not good to her, but she didn't expect that she was so bad. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 67. And Wei Yuxian spat out 2 words, hesitating in her heart whether to tell him about Ding Nana. After all, Ding Nana had hurt her quite a lot, and just that post was enough to make her sad. Just as she was thinking, Fu Xuanyi looked at her, narrowed his eyes, and asked with a hint of threat, "Don't tell me." He pretended to kiss her again, which frightened her. She quickly covered her mouth and said, I said. The same words as before were repeated again. Fu Xuanyi said with satisfaction and motioned her to continue speaking quickly with his eyes. By the time she finished speaking, the special assistant would have finished her investigation, and he would check to see if there was anything else she was hiding from him. If she still refuses to tell, then, kiss her until she admits everything. Her taste was very delicious, and he wouldn't mind trying it a few more times for such a good thing. Wei Yuxian was afraid that he would come again, and at the moment she had no intention of caring about whether he had been taken away from her or why he kissed her. Also, my roommates from our school also bullied me. All 3 of them bullied me. When Fu Xuanyi heard this, his eyes became more profound, but he did not show anything wrong. He hid it very well and asked softly, "How to bully?" Wei Yuxian thought for a moment and said, "They said I was poor and that I didn't deserve to study. Most of the time they insulted me. But a few days ago, a post suddenly appeared on the school forum, targeting me." After expressing her pain with her own words, the grievances in Wei Yuxian's heart surged into her heart again, as if those scenes were happening again. She has suffered many grievances, and few people in the world treat her with kindness. Fu Xuanyi said, "Let me take a look." He wanted to see how that post targeted her. Wei Yuxian didn't really want to show it to him. There was still a role for him in it, and he was described as an old man. However, he won't give up if you don't show it to him. No one can stop what this man wants to do. And with this man's ability, it was easy to find a small post. It was better for her to find it for him. After thinking about this, she took out her mobile phone, opened the post Cheng Jinjiao sent her, and handed it to Fu Xuanyi to read. Fu Xuanyi checked her cell phone in one hand, and held her in his other hand, refusing to let go, and just watched. The room became quiet again. Wei Yuxian looked at his face so close and the serious expression on his face, and couldn't help but breathe softly. He is really so handsome. She knew that now was not the time to think like this, but she still couldn't help but think about it because she was a little bored at the moment. 2 minutes later, Fu Xuanyi finished reading the post, but with still no expression on his face, he returned the phone to her and asked, "Is there anything else you are hiding from me?" Wei Yuxian shook her head firmly this time and said, "No more, just these 2 things, nothing else really matters." Fu Xuanyi asked, "Really?" Wei Yuxian nodded several times, "Really, really, really." Fu Xuanyi believed her words because there were 3 words written in her eyes, "Trust me." He asked, "Do you know who posted the post?" "I'm not sure who sent it, but I have a suspicious candidate, my roommate Ding Nana. She is the person who targets me the most in the school and is also the person who bullies me the most." After telling all this, Wei Yuxian felt much more relaxed. At least she no longer secretly hid these things by herself, but had someone to share the burden with her. Fu Xuanyi said yeah and said, I understand. There was nothing to say, and he didn't say whether he would help her. Wei Yuxian was a little anxious. She didn't know what he meant. Should he help her? She scratched her head and asked, can you help me? Fu Xuanyi thought of teasing her. He thought she was very cute and soft, so he asked, how can I help you? Wei Yuxian. I've been talking for a long time, but you haven't heard a word? Wei Yuxian felt a little angry in her heart and wanted to question him, but she thought of something in her heart. The anger disappeared immediately and she lowered her head in silence. Yes, Fu Xuanyi just asked her to speak out, and he didn't say he wanted to help her. Yes, Mr. Xian is a very busy man. He is very busy. She should be grateful if he can spare time to listen to her talk nonsense. How can she expect him to help her? She is just a little ant, and her affairs are only trivial. How dare she bother the superior Xian master? Sure enough, she shouldn't have said these things, they were only suitable for someone to keep in her heart. No one can help her, and no one wants to help her. She is a clown for people to laugh at. At this moment, Fu Xuanyi must be laughing at her in his heart, laughing at her for not being able to handle such a thing well, and laughing at her for not knowing how to fight back after being bullied by so many people. The weather suddenly became colder, even colder than when it snowed. Wei Yuxian hugged herself and looked around. The temperature remained the same and she understood. It turns out that it's not that the weather has gotten colder, but that her heart has gotten colder. Wei Yuxian, what are you looking forward to? In this world, no one loves you at all. No one will take you to heart. I will care whether you are doing well or not. Although I have always known this fact, when I think about it, I still feel sad. That heart that is riddled with holes can no longer go through many more storms. Tears welled up and her body was trembling slightly. She felt it was ironic that Fu Xuanyi's arms were so warm, but her heart was so cold. She doesn't even deserve warmth. Fu Xuanyi saw her mood suddenly drop and thought that she was a sensitive and unconfident person. With her pregnancy, she would have more things to think about. I felt a little regretful why I teased her. She must have been thinking of something bad at this moment, which made her cry from sadness. He raised her head and saw the tears on her face. She was so helpless and lifeless, and his heart ached in waves. Wei Yuxian didn't dare to look at him, her inferiority complex in front of him was completely exposed and exposed at a glance. She closed her eyes, lifeless, tears flowing from the corners of her eyes, silently, not daring to make a sound. At this moment, if Fu Xuanyi wanted her life, she would not resist. Because there is no point in struggling. Sometimes, going to another world is a kind of relief. She should have been numb, and she must be numb, to the indifference of the world and the indifference of the people in this world. Fu Xuanyi knew that he had made a big mistake, and comforted her at a loss. Don't cry, I said the wrong thing. The arrogant Master Xian turned to her. Bowed. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 68. After living for 29 years, he never bowed his head to anyone, not even his parents. But today, he bowed his head to a woman just because she would stop crying. He gently wiped away her tears, full of heartache, and said, I will help you with everything. Wei Yuxian's tears still didn't stop and she didn't dare to open her eyes. She didn't know how to face the current situation. In front of Fu Xuanyi, she always felt so inferior and couldn't hold her head up, as if they were not from the same world. Yes, they are indeed not from the same world. What is Master Xian's status in Kyoto, and how can he be in the same world as mortals like them? Wei Yuxian couldn't control her sadness. Even if Fu Xuanyi agreed to help her, he couldn't control it, as if he wanted to cry until he fainted. Fu Xuanyi had no experience in coaxing people and didn't know how to coax her. He could only pat her back time and time again and said, "Don't cry, I promise you." Comfort is very unfamiliar. As Wei Yuxian listened to his words, telling her to be good, her tears gradually stopped flowing, and she opened her slightly swollen eyes to look at the man in front of her. He has become so different, no longer cold at all. The question just now came to her mind again, and she asked, "Are you really, Fu Xuanyi?" There was a sob as he spoke, and he broke off once, which at least suppressed the tears. Fu Xuanyi wiped away her tears again and said, "It's true." "Then why are you? You don't look like Fu Xuanyi at all," she asked again, until all the doubts in her heart were revealed. Fu Xuanyi also asked, "What's the difference?" Wei Yuxian thought for a while, frowned, and said after a while, "Except for the face, there is nothing like him. The real Fu Xuanyi is aloof, doesn't know how to speak, doesn't care about others, and doesn't speak so gently. Unlike Fu Xuanyi now, who said several words, hugged her, wiped her tears, and coaxed her. This is so strange. This is not something Fu Xuanyi would do." Fu Xuanyi thought about his behavior today. It was indeed different from before. That was because he didn't have her around before, but now that he has her, things will naturally change. He said, "It's because of you that I will change." "Me?" Wei Yuxian sniffed and looked at him doubtfully. "What's wrong with me? Why is it because of me?" Fu Xuanyi felt helpless for her slow brain. Was she so slow about feelings? It's no wonder Wei Yuxian couldn't wrap her head around it. She never thought that Fu Xuanyi would like her. There has never been. Fu Xuanyi said, "Why do you want you to be Mrs. Fu?" Did he say it plainly enough? Wei Yuxian's mind was still a little confused. She was so dumbfounded when she cried just now. She asked, "Is it because of the child in my belly?" "Fu Xuanyi, you don't have to do this. You should leave that position to the person you like. I don't will occupy that position. Mrs. Fu, this is such a distant position, she does not deserve it." Fu Xuanyi said again, "Mrs. Fu's position will only belong to you, and in my heart, you are the only one. Do you understand?" He put his words more bluntly. Wei Yuxian tasted his words carefully and finally understood. The meaning behind Fu Xuanyi's words is that he likes her. How can this be? She looked at him with disbelief, trying to find any evidence that he was joking, but there was no evidence. There was no dodge in his eyes, only sincerity. So, what he said is true. Does he like himself? But. She murmured these two words, but she couldn't say them out for a long time. Fu Xuanyi, but what? Wei Yuxian said blankly, "But, I'm not worthy of you." Fu Xuanyi chuckled softly and said, "Whether you deserve it or not, I have the final say. If he says he deserves it, then he deserves it. If anyone says no." Wei Yuxian was stunned again. She didn't know what was going on in her mind. Her mind, which was not very bright at first, became even more sluggish at this moment. Her reaction seemed cute to Fu Xuanyi. She was dumbfounded and her little face was so cute. He didn't disturb her, giving her time to digest and understand. I don't know how long time passed, maybe a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, Wei Yuxian's mind finally turned around. Fu Xuanyi said he liked her. That Mr. Xian, who was not close to women, was abstinent and aloof, said he liked her. Like a dream, not real at all. But this is indeed true. Wei Yuxian recalled Fu Xuanyi's weird behaviors in the past, such as holding her hand, wiping her hands, and applying pregnancy oil to her. These were all things only close people would do. So, did Fu Xuanyi like her from that time on? Otherwise, why would you do such an inappropriate thing? A voice in her heart told her the answer, yes, that's it. Fu Xuanyi has liked her since then. Wei Yuxian didn't dare to breathe. She didn't know how to face and respond to his love, because she never thought that someone would like her. This person is still the Crown Prince of Kyoto, Mr. Xian. Too crazy. How virtuous and capable she is to be liked by Master Xian. So, she tried to change the subject and said, that, thank you for being willing to help me, I will repay you in the future. The words were spoken intermittently, as if they were improvised, but they were indeed improvised. She really didn't know what to say, her mind was very blank. Fu Xuanyi knew that she couldn't accept the news for a while, and he didn't force her to accept his love. Everything had to happen slowly. Tofu has to be eaten bite by bite and taste slowly to be the most delicious. He followed her words, if anything happens in the future, you have to tell me. As long as I am here, no one can bully you. His words were very plain, but they gave Wei Yuxian the most powerful protection. Fu Xuanyi said that no one can bully him, so no one can bully him, and he will not make it easy for those who have bullied her. Obedient mother and roommate, right? He remembered that these people should never want to live a peaceful life in the future. Wei Yuxian let out a muffled hum in his arms, feeling completely relaxed. With Fu Xuanyi, the matters on her mother's side and Ding Nana's side can be solved smoothly. She will not doubt the methods of Mr. Xian in Kyoto. With Fu Xuanyi taking action, she wouldn't have any worries, and she didn't want to care about their outcome. Anyway, she can live peacefully in the future. It's Fu Xuanyi's love, how should she treat it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 69. Wei Yuxian looked at Fu Xuanyi's handsome face and blushed a little. She blushed even more when she thought that this man still liked her. No, I can't stay in the same space with him anymore. I need to separate from him quickly and calm down. Staying with him, she couldn't think straight. Wei Yuxian tried to crawl out of his arms, not wanting to stay in his arms anymore, as this would be too intimate. She was not used to being so close to others, especially Fu Xuanyi. Master Xian, who was once so cold that he couldn't even smile. She was cautious, trying to crawl out of his arms without anyone noticing, but how could her small movements escape Fu Xuanyi's eyes? I saw that big hand holding the person tightly in his arms, continuing to wipe away the remaining tears on her face, and asked her, what consequences do you want for those people? Wei Yuxian didn't think about this in detail. She failed to escape and was pinned tightly in her arms. She had no chance to escape. She could only say, anyway, as long as their lives are not as good as mine, do you think I'm too cruel? After she finished the previous sentence, she paused and then added another sentence. She didn't know whether what she did was considered cruel. Fu Xuanyi touched her face and said, you are so kind. It just makes them live worse than her. This is too cheap for them. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Especially in his hands, Fu Xuanyi. He will make those people regret provoking his obedience. Wei Yuxian didn't know what to say, she just wanted to get out of his arms, because she could feel that Fu Xuanyi's body was very hot and warm, making her a little drowsy. At this point, it was time for her to take a nap. After crying for so long and dealing with her mother so much, she was already exhausted. Now she just wanted to take a nap to recharge her spirits. It just so happens that I can find a reason to get up from Fu Xuanyi. She twisted her body around, trying to break away from Fu Xuanyi's shackles, but no matter how much she twisted, she couldn't get away, and all her efforts were in vain. Fu Xuanyi was forced out of the situation by her. Although he was wearing thick clothes, the baby in his arms was restless and kept rubbing against him somewhere, making it difficult for him to even think of a reaction. Desire surged, his eyes became dangerous, his voice became deeper, and he held her down to taste the beauty of her lips. This time, not only were they lightly pressed together, he also pried open her lips and entered inside. Wei Yuxian was frightened again. She didn't expect that he would suddenly launch a sneak attack. She struggled with her hands in his arms, trying to push him away. Why did you kiss her again? He doesn't kiss enough, does he? What a shame. Fu Xuanyi had expected that she would push him away, so he used a little more force on his hands to prevent her from succeeding, and at the same time, the movements of his mouth went deeper. Wei Yuxian began to lack oxygen, and the strength in her body was drained away bit by bit. Her body could no longer hold on, and she fell limp in his arms, and she could only let him do whatever he wanted. The room was extremely quiet, except for the unusually loud sound of heavy breathing. Wei Yuxian was so confused that she didn't know where she was. She was only immersed in the beautiful feeling the man brought to her. She didn't even know that kissing could be so comfortable. Forgive her for being a novice who has never been in love. In the past, even eating was a problem, so how could she still have the energy to fall in love? She didn't know how long had passed, but Wei Yuxian blurred the passage of time, only feeling that she was severely deprived of oxygen and in urgent need of fresh air. She beat Fu Xuanyi's chest a few times and made a few woo-woo-woo sounds in her mouth, telling him that she really couldn't survive. Fu Xuanyi then let her go and looked at her unfocused eyes and hunched red face. She was so cute, but he still wanted to go a little further. The kiss just now made his whole body feel even hotter. But he knew that now was not the time, as it would cause harm to her body. Wei Yuxian breathed in the fresh air, and after she recovered, she quickly covered her mouth and looked at the man in front of her with tearful eyes, as if she was accusing him of being a super bad guy. She looks so weak and can be bullied, which makes people want to bully her even more. Fu Xuanyi knew that he couldn't stay any longer, something would happen, and he had to stay by himself for a while to calm down. But Wei Yuxian didn't know how dangerous the man in front of her was, and she was still struggling to escape from his arms. Fu Xuanyi could only say in a hoarse voice in her ear, "Don't move, it's dangerous." No matter how slow Wei Yuxian is in terms of lust, she now knows what Fu Xuanyi's situation is and doesn't dare to move anymore. She looks at him with big eyes, very well behaved, as if to say, "I won't move, so don't be impulsive." She was extremely scared, fearing that Fu Xuanyi would lose control, just like that night. There is still a baby in her belly, how can this be? No, 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 not even if there is no baby in her belly. She looked like she was about to cry, but she didn't dare to act rashly. She was a pitiful little girl. Fu Xuanyi was so soft-hearted that he picked him up with a big hand, put him next to him, and said in a hoarse voice, "Have a good sleep. When you wake up, everything will be solved." He could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She was a little distracted when they kissed just now, but she was just sleepy. Then go to sleep, sleep like a little princess, and when you wake up, all worries will be gone. Wei Yuxian finally got the result she wanted, nodded her head a few times, said twice, and said softly, "I'm going to sleep." After saying that, she opened the quilt and lay down on her own. She closed her eyes and didn't hear the man getting up. She couldn't help but open her eyelids and take a peek, but she was caught by the man. She hurriedly closed her eyes again, and pulled the quilt up a little more, covering her mouth and nose, leaving only a pair of eyes exposed, like a small animal hiding from danger. With a smile on his lips, Fu Xuanyi pulled her quilt down and covered her with the quilt to ensure that she would not be suffocated. Wei Yuxian did not dare to move the whole time, her eyes were closed and trembling slightly. "Good boy, sweet dreams." After saying that, he leaned over, left a light kiss on her forehead, stood up and left. Wei Yuxian pretended to be dead until the room door closed again, and then she opened her eyes. He sat up and looked at the door. It was closed tightly. There was still the smell of a man in the air, a unique smell that only belonged to him. Even if she wants to deceive herself that he has never been here. To this day, she still feels like she is dreaming, and feels that everything that just happened was a dream. Because, it's so fantastic. Not true at all. Fu Xuanyi's performance and what he said he liked were all untrue. She lay back on the bed again, staring blankly at the ceiling, feeling confused. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 70. After Fu Xuanyi left the room, he first went back to his room and took a cold shower to calm down completely. Afterwards, he did not choose to go to the company, but went to his study room and sat quietly reading the information sent to him by the special assistant. All of them are information about Wei Yuxian being bullied. One by one, from home to school. The more Fu Xuanyi looked, the uglier his face became, and the anger surged in his heart. Unbeknownst to him, it turned out that his Guai had suffered so many grievances and still kept it secretly in his heart without telling anyone. Even he hid it well from himself. It was because he didn't care enough about her. Otherwise, how could he not notice that she was being bullied? In school, those people bullied her every day, but she didn't say a word and just endured it silently. And why didn't he spend more time investigating it? In this way, Guai won't be bullied like this. I even almost suffered from depression. If not for today, how long would she plan to hide it from him? It's also because he didn't give her too much sense of security, so that she thought she was alone and helpless. No. No, she is not alone, he is behind her. In the future, he will pay more attention to her and never let anyone have the opportunity to bully her. After reading the information, he sat quietly on the boss's chair with his eyes closed, waiting for someone. I couldn't help but recall that his obedient appearance was so endearing. He is so good at being obedient, how could anyone be willing to bully her? I don't know when I took off the Buddhist beads on my wrist, put them on my hands, and twisted them time and time again, purifying my heart. He had too many distracting thoughts and too much violent energy in his mind. It was time to clear his mind. I don't know how long it took, but there was a knock on the door of the study. Fu Xuanyi stopped spinning the beads in his hand, opened his eyes were clear, and said, "Come in." The person who opened the door was Aunt Fu, and there were two people behind her. She said, "Master Xian, people are here." Fu Xuanyi said and looked at the two people outside the door. Aunt Fu invited the people in and asked the servants to serve tea. Then she leaned forward and said, "Master Xian, please give me more instructions if you have anything else." Fu Xuanyi said yes again, and Aunt Fu retreated. The people who came were two men, one of whom was wearing formal business attire and a pair of elegant gold-rimmed glasses on his nose. They were Fu Xuanyi's special assistant Guan Jinyue. The other man was dressed more casually, with a black fur coat and a bohemian smile on his face. He was Fu Xuanyi's good assistant Lu Changxiao. Lu Changxiao's status is quite special, and he rarely appears in the public eye, because the things he manages for Fu Xuanyi are things that cannot be seen in public. Master Xian, the two of them sat on chairs and shouted respectfully. Although Lu Changxiao was uninhibited, he had absolute respect for Fu Xuanyi. He didn't know what happened or why Master Xian called him here, so he asked, "Master Xian, what are your orders for calling me here?" "As long as it's your order, even if it means going up the mountain of knives and under the sea of fire, I won't hesitate." Guan Jinyue knew what happened. It was nothing more than his wife's matters. Master Xian called them over to deal with it. He asked, "How does Mr. Xian want to deal with this matter? What kind of outcome do you want them to get?" Fu Xuanyi's eyes were cold, and the Buddhist beads in his hand began to rotate again at some point. If it weren't for the unstoppable murderous aura in him, others might really think that he was a Buddhist practitioner. but only he knows why he wears a string of Buddhist beads on his hand all year round. It is used to suppress anger. Lu Changxiao looked at the people around him in confusion and asked, "What's going on? Why do you even know about it?" "I don't know." Guan Jinyu smiled at him and said, "It's Madame's business." Lu Changxiao suddenly understood and said, "Speaking of which, I haven't met Madame yet. When will Mr. Xian take Madame to open the eyes of the brothers?" When he learned that his master Xian had a wife for no apparent reason, he couldn't believe it. But that was the news from Master Cheng, so he had to believe it even if he didn't believe it. "So I always wanted to see what their Master Xian's wife looked like." He wanted to know what kind of person could make Master Xian, who had been a celibate man for 29 years, break his precepts. Fu Xuanyi glanced at him lightly and said, "Let's talk about it later." Guan Jinyu has never seen what his wife looks like in real life, he has only seen photos. From the photos, he can see that his wife is a great beauty, a cute type. He also wanted to see Madame's true face in Lushan. "Let's get down to business." Fu Xuanyi's words interrupted Lu Changxiao's desire to continue gossiping. Lu Changxiao curled his lips and said, "Master Xian, please give me your orders." Fu Xuanyi glanced at Guan Jinyu, who said consciously, "Now that we know the location of Ding Nana and others and Madame's mother, should we take action immediately or wait?" Fu Xuanyi's face was cold, and his tone was also cold. "Act immediately. It won't work if you let them have fun outside for just one more second." Guan Jinyu nodded and sent 2 locations to Lu Changxiao on his mobile phone, one belonging to Wei's mother and one belonging to Ding Nana, and said, "Please, send someone to capture them." While Lu Changxiao was sending messages to the people below, he asked, "What's going on? Just let me arrest people. Why don't you tell me why you want to arrest people?" He was confused and extremely confused. It's okay if Master Xian doesn't tell him, and Guan Jinyu doesn't even tell him. Guan Jinyu glanced at Fu Xuanyi and saw that he had no intention of speaking. He also knew that he didn't like to talk, so he said, "These people have bullied Madame." "What?" Lu Changxiao almost jumped up. "How dare they bully Madame?" He picked up his cell phone and sent a message to the people below, asking them to take him back as quickly as possible. "How dare you bully their wife? It's so boring. Someone actually dares to challenge Mr. After Lu Changxiao sent the message, he asked, "Master Xian, are these people allowed to live?" Fu Xuanyi said calmly, "You can't lie too well. Just a few words decided the fate of those people in their lives. Sometimes life is more uncomfortable than death. In order to let them enjoy more of the sufferings of the world, he will not let them end their lives easily. Letting them live and letting them suffer is the most painful thing, isn't it?" Lu Changxiao pulled a cruel smile from the corner of his mouth and said, "Okay, leave this matter to me. I promise to give Master Xian a satisfactory answer. Brothers will not make it easy for those who bully the madam. It's been a long time since I've moved my muscles and bones, and just in time these stupid people came to my door.